Ziyad sat at the head of the long table, surrounded by his top traders, city guards, and 2 of his own sons. The room was lit with warm lanterns, the scent of rich wood and fresh papers all around. Everything was in order just as he liked it. A servant brought his tea. He sipped it slowly. Within moments, he felt a sharp twist in his stomach. He straightened up, trying to stay composed, but his hands began to shake. His eldest son, Zahid, noticed first. "Father?" Ziyad's breathing grew short, his eyes unfocused. He tried to stand, but collapsed forward, knocking the cup onto the floor. The table went silent. One of the guards shouted for help. He died within minutes. No time for farewell. No time for a will. The doctors later said it was poisoning. Silent, clean, delivered in a single sip. No one knew who did it. No one had the courage to investigate. And with his death, everything began to fall apart. The next day, a fire broke out in the West Warehouse, his largest storage unit, holding goods for 4 cities. It burned for 6 hours. Nothing remained but ash. A week later, 3 of his tax collectors were attacked outside the southern market. 2 were beaten. 1 fled. The people refused to pay any more. They said the system had robbed them for years. Now that Ziyad was dead, they wouldn't give a single coin. Then the orphan care house. He had built the one he funded from his own earnings was looted by angry mobs. The workers fled. The building was closed down. The water distribution line Ziyad had built for poor area built by increasing tax from farmers was shut down after 2 men were found unconscious next to broken valves. Locals had started destroying public works funded by him, calling it blood water. One of Ziyad's charity medical centers was stormed. Locals threw the medicines into the streets. "He made us pay 10 times more for salt and wheat just to give us free pills. We're not slaves," shouted an old man on the scene. Ziyad's school for poor children closed after parents pulled their children out. "The books were free, but our stomachs were empty," one father said. His trade empire, built over 20 years, collapsed in 2 weeks. Even the roads leading into the city were blocked. Merchants began avoiding the region. Trades dried up, prices dropped, workers left. Ziyad's youngest son, Yunus, walked into the main office days later and found the staff packing their things. One man, an old accountant, stopped and looked at him. "We only worked here because we were afraid of your father," he said. "Now that he's gone, no one wants to live under that weight anymore." Ziyad had given millions in charity. He had built housing projects, schools, water systems. But now, even the poor, the very people he claimed to serve, turned their backs. "His money helped us," one man said, "but the way he got it crushed us." They didn't cry for him. They didn't mourn. They didn't even stand by his grave. Only Zahid and Yunus remained, 2 sons watching their father's name disappear faster than his wealth. And in the middle of the city, in the place once called the trading capital of 5 regions, there was only silence. Ziyad started as a small merchant, just a single cart near the old city gates, selling dried fruits, grains, and oils. He was smart, calculated, and quiet. In his early days, he was humble. He'd weigh the goods twice to make sure the customer wasn't undercharged or overcharged. But the more he earned, the more he changed. The first real shift came when he bought the narrow road between Jerhan and Basra, a key trading path for regional sellers. Instead of maintaining it freely, he built a toll checkpoint and started charging small traders to pass through. "Just 1 silver coin," he told them. "It's for safety and cleaning." No one argued at first, but within months, that 1 coin became 3, then 5. Farmers who brought milk, eggs, or grain from outer villages were now losing half their profit just getting into the city. One old vendor named Khalid, who had sold goat milk for over 30 years, was the first to speak up. He walked up to Ziyad's guard post and said, "I've seen 3 leaders come and go. No one ever taxed us for walking on our own legs." Ziyad's reply was simple. "Then maybe it's time you retire." The next morning, Khalid's cart was gone, confiscated. No one saw him selling again. After that, fear spread. No one questioned Ziyad. He expanded quickly, acquired warehouses, shops, and land. Slowly, he became the central controller of salt, sugar, spices, lentils, and wheat. These were things every home needed, but now, Ziyad priced them higher than ever. People would come to the market and stare at the shelves. "How can sugar cost more than chicken?" an old woman asked. The shopkeeper shook his head. "We don't set the prices. Ziyad's men do." Even when crops were strong, when imports were high, the prices stayed the same. Because Ziyad made the system, and he made it for one goal: profit. And yet, the people hesitated to speak against him, because they'd hear Ziyad's name being praised at the masjid. Ziyad donated 100 gold coins for widows this month. Ziyad is building a masjid in the next district. Ziyad funded an entire wedding for 20 orphans. His charity was loud. His cruelty was quiet. There was a night when he was sitting in his home with his assistants. One of them, a young boy named Rami, spoke nervously. "Sir, some of the small vendors are unable to pay this week's booth fee. They asked for a 2-day delay." Ziyad stared at him. "Then they shouldn't be selling. Remove them, but their stock will spoil, and they're already in debt." Ziyad raised his voice. "Remove them." The next morning, 6 small booths in the West Market were removed, their goods thrown into the drain. Rami was silent for days after that. Another time, a woman came directly to Ziyad's office, a widow with 2 children. She came barefoot, carrying a small basket of wheat. "I have nothing else," she said, "but I need flour for my children. Can I trade this?" Ziyad looked at the wheat and said coldly, "You should have thought of your children before coming here with nothing." She walked away crying. Later that day, Ziyad donated 10 gold coins to an Islamic school in another city. That's how he lived, always taking from the struggling and giving to the broken, but only when it earned him praise. His favorite line to repeat was, "The people suffer now, so they don't suffer later. I take from them to build for them." But he never once lowered the prices, never once gave discounts, never once paused the taxes, not even during droughts. When the eastern region had a flood and food supply was low, people from neighboring towns came to his city for help. Ziyad met with his advisors. "We'll give them wheat, rice, and clean water," he said. The room nodded. "But double the price," he added. "Desperation is a market too." One of his old managers, Munir, stood up. "Sir, if you charge them now, they might not survive winter." Ziyad replied calmly, "Winter is not my concern. Revenue is." Munir resigned that evening. Ziyad continued growing, but with that growth came a heart no longer touched by the suffering of the people. He had mosques under his name, shelters under his name, wells and schools with marble plaques honoring his service. But what he never realized was that every coin he gave was soaked in the sweat and pain of others. His workers hated him but obeyed. His managers feared him but respected his results. The poor accepted his charity but never gave him their prayers. And now he was dead. And none of that wealth, none of those plaques, none of that power could follow him. Zahid stood under the sun, staring at his father's grave. It had been over a month since Ziyad's death, but something wasn't right. The workers had built a shelter over the grave to provide shade. Marble tiles were placed around it. Fresh water was poured daily to cool the ground. But no matter what they did, the soil stayed hotter than the graves around it. At first, Zahid ignored it. "It's just the weather," he told himself. "Graves don't mean anything. His deeds are what matter." But deep down, he felt it. This wasn't normal. Then came the first dream. Zahid saw his father sitting on the ground, dressed in his best clothes, but his skin was red, almost burnt. Sweat poured down his face, and he kept mumbling the same sentence over and over. "They cried while I counted coins. They begged while I built walls." Zahid woke up in a panic. He went to the masjid that morning for Fajr, the first time since his father died. He didn't tell anyone about the dream, but the second one came a few nights later. This time, Ziyad was standing in a dark room. Around him were voices faint, desperate, angry, cries from strangers. And then, one by one, faces appeared. Men, women, children. All faces Zahid had never seen. Ziyad looked at him and said, "They gave me money I didn't deserve. Now they take back what I never earned." Zahid sat up in bed, his forehead wet, his chest heavy. He finally spoke to Yunus, his younger brother. "Have you noticed something strange at the grave?" Yunus nodded. "It's always hot, even when it rains." Zahid didn't waste time. That day, he met with Imam Farouk, an elder scholar in their city, a quiet man who never sought attention. Zahid explained everything: his father's empire, his charity, his profit-taking, the dreams, the grave. He didn't hold anything back. When he finished, the Imam remained silent for a long time. Then he spoke. "There are people who give charity with one hand while robbing others with the other. People praise them, build their image, call them generous, but Allah knows who they really are." Zahid listened, his throat dry. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that on the Day of Judgment, a man will be dragged before Allah and reminded of all his charity, and he will say, "I gave in your cause." But Allah will say, "You lied. You gave so people would call you generous," and he will be thrown into the fire. Zahid whispered. But my father, he prayed, he fasted, he built so many things for the poor. The Imam replied, that is between him and Allah. But tell me something, did he ever reduce the burden on the people who carried his wealth on their backs? Zahid said nothing. Did he ever ask how a farmer feeding 5 children paid extra for salt? Again, Zahid stayed silent. Did he ever fear that taking more than necessary, even with good intention, could turn blessings into punishment? Zahid stood, his face pale. I need to know the full truth. He began visiting markets, talking to the traders his father worked with, the guards, the laborers. One by one, the stories came. A date vendor who lost his stall because he couldn't afford the tax on a public bench. A widow who begged Ziyad to delay her debt, repayment that refused, and she had to sell her daughter's wedding jewelry. A small-time spice seller who once made a mistake in his delivery and was banned from entering the city for a year. Zahid listened to all of them. By the end of the week, he had filled an entire notebook. Then came the final story. An old man approached Zahid outside the masjid, his eyes tired, his beard white. I worked for your father for 15 years, he said. He built a house for me when I lost mine. He paid for my grandson's surgery. But I also watched him destroy 5 small businesses with his own rules. So tell me, son, was he generous or cruel? Zahid had no answer. That night, he went back to the grave, alone. No guards, no workers, no flowers. He sat beside the hot ground and whispered, I don't know where you are, Father, but I'm starting to understand why I can't sleep, why your grave won't cool, why nothing feels right. He placed his hand gently on the dirt. It was warm, too warm. He didn't cry. He just sat there, quiet, ashamed, and, for the first time in his life, Ziyad's son felt poor. If you want to give something to the poor, then first ask yourself, where is this coming from? Are you giving from your wealth, or are you giving from someone else's rights? Are you feeding one orphan while cutting the salary of the worker who guards your home all night? Are you donating to a masjid while your maid goes hungry in the same house? Because if your charity is built on someone else's pain, it's not a good deed, it's theft dressed as generosity. Today, people take pride in building shelters and sponsoring orphans. But behind those noble causes are workers whose wages are cut in half, guards who haven't been paid on time, cleaners who are shouted at like animals. You want reward? Then help without oppressing anyone in the process. You want blessings? Then make sure you haven't stolen someone's ease just to buy your own Jannah. Do not be the one who stands on the day of judgment with files full of charity, prayer, and fasting only to have it burned before your eyes. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ warned us clearly. A man will come on the day of judgment with deeds as high as Mount Ahud, but Allah will make them dust. The companions asked why, and he ﷺ said, because he would pray, fast, give charity, but when he was alone, he would break the limits of Allah. That includes those who break hearts, those who crush others to look righteous, those who gain the world's praise by feeding one hungry stomach while stealing the livelihood of another. Ziyad built schools, but taxed rice until families starved. He gave to the poor, but took more from the struggling. He left behind masjids and wells, but not a single tear when he died. Because people don't cry for generosity that comes from greed. And Allah does not accept charity that's soaked in injustice. So ask yourself before giving, am I solving a need or buying a name? It's better to lift a burden silently than to donate publicly while stepping on someone else's neck. Because when the scale is placed before you and you see your good deeds turn into smoke, you will wish you had fed your employee instead of building a reputation. You will wish you had reduced a price, not increased your image. And you will realize Allah counts everything, including the way you earned your so-called good deeds. Subscribe for more Islamic stories.